What's your greatest, most satisfying, I freaking called it moment? Story 1. Similar story. When I was with this girl in college, she had two friends who were pretty shady. One was maybe possibly affiliated through his brother to a gang, and the other was his best friend, his tag-along. The first dude and I became acquaintances at best, and we were polite to each other, until he flipped and threatened me to send his friends because I didn't want to provide him with what I was doing in bed with my girlfriend. I told my girlfriend that I would prefer not to have her near him and his friend anymore, explained how the friend was into vulnerable girls and was taking advantage of them for a long time, and the other one was probably in a gang with his brother. Not a week later, I caught her kissing the tag-along friend, who takes advantage of girls, in plain view. We broke up on the spot. Apparently she went to live with him, but turned out they just wanted her in the gang. She broke up and had a hard time getting away. I told her so. Story 2. When I was in 6th grade, I became friends with a couple of other girls in my neighborhood. We each had completely different backgrounds, but we just clicked. For years, we three did all things good friends do. The only thing I personally didn't like was to stay over at the house of one of these girls. I'll call her Brianna. I'd sleep over at the other girl's house, they could sleep at mine, but I always came with an excuse not to stay at Brianna's. She started to get her feelings hurt, but I ignored it. Then, when we were all about 16, somebody got a hold of liquor, and we all sat around drinking. Having too much to drink, we got into a little debate about who's better friends with who, and I was somehow accused of not liking Brianna as much as the other friend because I wouldn't spend much time at her house. Since I had zero filters at that moment, I blurted out, "Brianna, it isn't you, it's your dad. He's a kitty fiddler. I can tell just by looking at him." As soon as I said it, everything changed. I apologized. That didn't work, of course. Both of my best girlfriends dumped me that day. I still had a solid best friend, but I had to get myself a new group for sure. Also, they started bullying me a bit, but I just took it because of the horrible thing I said about Brianna's dad. I felt super guilty. 3 years later, I was out of high school, living with my best friend who were still friends with Brianna. I got home from class and there was Brianna sitting on the living room couch. It was so uncomfortable. I decided to try to apologize again. "Hey, I know you're probably sick of hearing this, but I am so very sorry for what I said about your dad, Brianna. Please forgive me. I still don't know why I'd say such a thing." She sort of chuckled and said, "It's no big deal. He did it to all of us." I never questioned my intuition again, because I called it the second I saw that nasty man. By us, I believe she meant all of the daughters in the family. There were 3. I don't know if any of my former friends were victims too. Last I heard, I was still a smack talker about her dad and I wasn't going to correct them and humiliate her again. I figure she can tell who she wants. No, I'm not proud that I called her dad a kitty fiddler. It all came out because her younger sister said something to a church minister, but he was never brought into the criminal justice system and Brianna moved out of state. She and I remained friendly and kept in touch for several years but lost contact. I still do feel really bad about saying that about her dad to her. It was a bad thing to say. I could have kept it to myself and just stayed away from their house, but too much to drink doesn't do that, I guess. That's probably why they were bullying her in the first place. They were too scared to admit it. I hope they're all doing okay. Story 3. My boyfriend's best friend, let's call him John, started asking me for favors and texting me at odd hours of the night. Felt uneasy about John's actions and informed my boyfriend every time I was contacted as soon as it happened. I explained to my boyfriend that John was acting suspicious and making me uncomfortable, but I couldn't pinpoint why. Cut to a month or so later, John claims I cheated on my boyfriend with him. I knew it. Disclaimer, I didn't do anything with John, and he's been demoted from best friend to no longer acknowledged person on earth. I don't know why John did what he did, and I likely will never know. However, his actions were a reflection of who he is as a person and have very little to do with me. My boyfriend and I are still going strong. It's a privilege to spend my days with my boyfriend. I hit the jackpot by getting to be in a relationship with him, and I wouldn't risk it for anything. Story 4. Caught up with a high school friend in a university campus. Pretty quiet guy with subtle good looks, but he never showed any interest in relationships. We were waiting for separate buses when he ran into one of his classmates and she joined us in the bus line. We were having a pretty good conversation, but I saw her eyes repeatedly flickering over to his face. Soon after, my bus pulled up, so I smiled and waved goodbye to my friend and said to the girl, "It was great meeting you. I'm sure I'll see you a lot more in the future." She looked puzzled but smiled and waved back. They're in a common law marriage now, getting officially married next year. They've been valuable friends to my fiancé and me for the last 6 years. Psst. Let's be honest. Does your room look dullish? Yeah, well, most do. Luckily, I just launched Rufus Rugs. Custom, hand-tufted rugs. And no, this isn't some BS dropshipping company. We have a warehouse in Canada where me and my friends hand-tuft every single rug. So if you're looking to bring your room to life with some awesome anime rugs, or literally anything you can think of, we can get it done for you. From Rick and Morty to The Last Airbender, we've got you covered. Hit the link in the description to get a free quote. Story 5. In high school, my best friend's little sister, who was 16 at the time, brought home her new 18-year-old boyfriend from work to meet the family. I was over 18 at the time and talked to him for a while because we were the same age. After meeting him, something was off. I got the impression that 1, he was much older than he was claiming, and 2, he had been in jail. I wound up saying something to my friend who told his parents and sister. Long story short, the family freaked out on me for spreading rumors that weren't true, telling me to mind my own business, etc. 2 years later, the sister comes home from a date with him in tears. He finally came out and admitted to her that 1. He was 30, not the now 20 he was saying, and 2. He had spent 2 years in prison, but refused to say for what. I was very quick to point out to the family how I called these years earlier and was basically shamed out of their house. I'm really not sure how the family didn't immediately pick up he was a lot older. I can only venture to guess and would rather not speculate. Also, this was before the time of being able to Google someone and look up their records. I'm still close to my friend and his family. There was a point later on where I got a, gee, maybe we should have listened to you. I have no clue what he was in jail for. Still don't know. It was hardly a rumor if they only told the family out of caution. Yikes. Story 6. My husband is super medically fragile. He had cancer twice and a bone marrow transplant in the last 9 years. A few years ago, he had surgery on his wrist and had a gut feeling he was brewing an infection despite being on antibiotics. His surgeon's office saw him and switched ABX. I contacted the cancer center because I just knew it was going to become more. They blew me off and punted back to the surgeon's office. I knew this was beyond the surgeon's scope. I pitched a tantrumy fit and pretty much told them they were going to see them and I wasn't accepting no for an answer. The triage phone nurse was condescending and told me it was probably nothing and could wait. We go to the clinic and the nurse there started looking around the incision site. She told me that she believed my gut and insisted on admitting him. The CT showed a huge infection that landed him in the hospital for a week and potent IV antibiotics with another surgery to clean out the site. Adding on, he's followed by a PharmD in his BMT clinic as well as utilizing a pharmacy just for patients like him, as it's not a retail pharmacy. He obviously has a lot of other issues too, and I'm just doing what a spouse is supposed to do. I'm no saint and sometimes I lose my temper at both him and the situation. If there's anything I can beg of you, please check in on older relatives if they're hospitalized or in homes and double check that their meds are correct and their medical history is right. We're lucky enough that I'm not older or confused, and that I'm a student enough to keep up with his info. Hell, I've made a few stumbles along the way and I'm reasonably intelligent. I can see how easy it could be to mess things up if someone was incapable. Story 7. It was New Year's Eve and we were about to set off the fireworks. My friend and I wanted to set up the box for the fireworks, which was just putting 4 bricks around it to keep it safe and starting it. Then this girl came and said she was going to do it because she bought it. We told her how to do it and she said, "Nah, I'll just start it up." I told her, "Don't blame me when it tips over and starts shooting at us." She said it wouldn't happen. That's exactly what happened. The firework just tipped over and started shooting at cars and people. I just calmly walked up to her and said, "I told you so." Story 8. In my first year in college, on my level 1 motor vehicle engineering course, we were taught how to change spark plugs and adjust the timing on engines. So my then friend, we'll call him Ryan, is working with me in a 1998 Audi A3 1.8 non-turbo. We both agreed that I should do the timing as I was more confident about it, which makes little sense thinking about it now, and that he wanted to remove the spark plugs. When he was taking out the first plug, I noticed that he wasn't very careful about it. For those of you who don't know much about cars, spark plugs are made of ceramic and metal. And the ceramic is easy to snap if you're not careful, and when it does, little pieces of ceramic will end up falling inside the cylinder, which if the car is started, can cause serious damage to your engine. Anyway, I tell Ryan that he should be careful about taking out the spark plugs. He just says, "Nah man, it's fine, they're made of metal." I didn't reply as I noticed that he didn't give a damn about the job, so he unscrews the second spark plug and pulls really hard as if he can't fully undo it, and right there, I hear the spark plug snap in half. And to top it off, the entire ceramic part of the spark plug fell inside the cylinder. I immediately told him to tell the tutor, which he of course didn't. So then after he moves away from the car, our tutor tells us to move the car to a different spot. I give Ryan the keys and say, "Go on then," as I didn't have my license then. So he gets in and starts the car, and right from the start, me and the tutor can hear something knocking inside the engine. And before the tutor could tell Ryan to switch off, we hear a very loud pop. The engine stops by itself. Right there and then, out loud, I looked Ryan straight in the eyes and said, "I called it, you airhead." He got kicked off the course since this was an actual teacher's car. I blame the teacher. No way in hell am I letting a first-year student work on something as expensive as an engine without my direct supervision. And no way in hell am I letting you keep watching this video without liking the video and subscribing to the channel either. Story 9. When I was a kid shooting off fireworks and supervised, I opened up this big package and pulled out this little ball with a platform on one side. So I put the platform on the ground, lit it, and it explodes, goes 5 feet into the air and explodes again. Big. Like, that should have been in the sky big. I'm surprised it didn't get injured or light anything on fire. So I figure that one must have been a dud, and I light another. I hid behind a car this time. Same thing happens. It's at this point I start looking at the box for directions, because something is clearly not right. Turns out there's a tube in the box which is essentially the cannon for these things. You drop the bomb in the tube, light it, the tube funnels the force to actually shoot it up into the sky, and then it explodes again. So I was definitely just exploding sky bombs at ground level. They're called mortars. Story 10. I don't know about satisfying, but do y'all remember The Runaway Bride? Not the movie, the actual woman. Well, there was a woman who was kidnapped before her wedding, maybe a couple days before, if I'm not mistaken, and the whole world started looking for her. If I remember correctly, she was able to make a phone call to her family and she told them she was kidnapped by some Mexicans. As soon as she said that, I knew she was lying. Whenever people specify a race when explaining a crime, my ears perk up. But I understand why she did it. People will believe it. Either way, my girlfriend at the time got so mad at me, saying, "You always think you know it all. This woman was kidnapped and all you can do is think of something to be right about. Have some compassion." Couple days later, guess who shows up? Apparently she didn't want to get married and decided to get kidnapped rather than call it off. Luckily, the state made her pay back all the money they spent to search for her, but of course, no jail time. I never said a told you so to my girlfriend, but I know she was waiting for it by how she was acting. Didn't speak much, acted aloof, so we never spoke of it after. And the Notebook, as soon as the movie started, I was like, oh, so they have Alzheimer's. Am I the only one who saw that coming? And the old man that we don't know goes to read to a random woman every day? Story 11. I had a friend who bought $2,000 worth of penny stock and share prices went up by a factor of 10. So he had $20,000 worth of this stock in less than 1 week. He called me to basically brag about how smart he was for finding this great stock. I congratulated him and strongly advised him, multiple times, to cash out at least $2,000. I suggested $5,000. That would leave him with 3/4 or more of his original shares and he would be playing with house money. If the stock continued shooting up, he would be filthy rich either way. But if the shares tanked in value, then at least he wouldn't be out any money. Not only did he not listen to me, he invested more and lost absolutely all of it. I found out later that all the money he invested, $10,000, was actually from a loan he had taken out to try his hand in the stock market. If I had known that, I would have been even more adamant about cashing out. Imagine paying off a $10,000 loan in a week and still having $10,000 in the bank. But I don't think he would have listened to me no matter what I said. Just a funny anecdote. In the midst of this, he gave his mom a birthday card that contained a single dollar bill and he wrote inside, "This is the first of millions." My friend is an idiot. It's always good to leave 50% out because if it keeps going up, you're still in the game, but if it drops, you lose all the profits. Just my 2 cents though. Story 12. I still relish that I was right about this. That show 19 Kids and Counting? Over Thanksgiving, 1 year, 2 of my aunts got talking about it and were just raving about how amazing they thought it was and what a great family they had. I pretty much said something to the degree of, nope, that's not normal. Those kids are essentially raising each other and I guarantee you that something is not right. They completely dismissed me, said I didn't know what I was talking about because I don't watch the show, etc. When the news eventually broke that one was some of the others, I felt so vindicted. But my absolute favorite moment was the next Thanksgiving when at the dinner table I got to say, "So, how about the Duggar family, huh?" Dead silence from my aunts, but I had a grin on my face from ear to ear. Story 13. Probably too late, but I want to share this anyway. During the last few months of my wife's pregnancy with my daughter, the little baby would regularly clock work around 10:30 p.m., put her feet against my wife's ribs and try to straighten her legs so she could headbutt her way out of my wife's. Bam. Headbutt to the inside of your whatever. My wife would jump up cursing like a sailor every time. It was painful but also hilarious, reliable, and I guess we knew she'd be an active little kid well before she was born. Cut to the evening of her birth. The doctor is telling us around 9 p.m. that things are going well, but he's going to get dinner because he has an Ian and there's no way this kid is coming out before midnight. I look at my wife, look at the doc, and say, "Don't go far. The kid is going to deliver herself around 10:30 p.m. I promise you. You're just going to have to catch her." He laughed, told us he's been doing this a long time, and he wasn't worried. 10:25, he's rushing in and barely gets his gloves and scrubs on before my daughter shoots herself out of mommy like a greased bullet. Direct quote from the doctor looking at me as he holds my little darling. Well, I guess even I can still learn things. I don't blame him at all. Who would believe parents about something like that? But that kid had done so many test runs on such a regular schedule, I knew there was no stopping her. In fair game, getting headbutted daily for a month or whatever as a trade-off to having a very short and easy labor, there are worse deals. Story 14. I've been practicing law in the same venue for many years with the same judges and attorneys. A new hotshot attorney out of law school is opposing counsel. It's a death case. My client was not responsible, but opposing counsel would not listen to reason. On the eve of the trial, my client is willing to offer a decent amount to settle the case. I called the attorney and encouraged her to take it. I told her that if she didn't accept, when we went to trial the next day I was going to have all her evidence thrown out and strike her witnesses. She thought I was bluffing. I assured her I was not. I told her to call any attorney in the area and ask them if I was a straight shooter. She basically told me to bugger off and that she'd see me at trial. Sure enough, the judge excludes her documentary evidence, all hearsay, and strikes her witnesses. She has zero evidence when the judge is through with her. Her client was in tears. I think she got sued for malpractice. She wasn't at that firm long after that debacle, but I told her that would happen. That was very decent of them to give her the heads up. Story 15. My wife and I went to Red Lobster one day. My wife likes the shrimp and lobster pasta with Parmesan cheese. They sat her plate down. She got a weird look on her face. She told me it smelled weird. It smelled normal to me. I straight up asked her if she could be pregnant. Her eyes got wide as she started doing some math in her head. We went afterwards and got a pregnancy test. Sure enough, I was right, and she didn't even know yet. All because I remember some random tidbit about some food smelling off to pregnant women. Story 16. Dude at work had been complaining about his crazy girlfriend and her problems. 2 weeks later, he's talking about how she's pregnant. In my head, I'm thinking, she's going to lose the baby because it isn't real. Sure enough, he comes in all sad just over 2 more weeks later saying he had a miscarriage. Some time passed and he's complaining about her crazy antics again. She probably will end up pregnant for real though. Fake it again, say they don't need protection because she was already pregnant, and bam, their friend is mega screwed. Story 17. My wife was watching a TV show. I happened to walk in during some scene in which it was raining out and a guy and a gal were looking at each other through their car windows as their kid went from one car to the other. I said, "Here comes the scene where they make up," without knowing any context of the show. My wife started telling me that it won't happen. They had had a failed relationship years earlier, hence the kid, and the woman was with a great guy. Right after she said that, the woman got out and ran to the guy's car, basically professing her love for him. Story 18. About a year after my father's death, my mother got together with a man. I felt as if something was off from the start and told her that he didn't seem right, that he was going to do something stupid and hurt her emotionally. A year later, they got engaged and they seemed happy. I've never seen my mother so happy since before my father died. Well, as of yesterday, it came out that this man had been engaged to someone else since before my mother met him, and that he has been sleeping with at least 2 other women on a regular basis. I wish I could tell her that I had freaking called it, but I'm afraid it will make her more upset. Anyways, now to build my revenge plan. Wish me luck. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy most badass accidental comebacks ever said. Story 3 was lit. See you in that video.